So I'm going to blame one of the council members for this sermon. If you want to deal with it, I'll let you know later. You can come up to me one-on-one and I'll tell you who to blame. No, actually, they influenced me for this sermon, to be honest with you. So there's no doubt in my mind that one of the most familiar Psalms, and maybe most familiar verses in the entire Bible, is Psalm 23. Now, if you're old like me, or older, you may remember that most of us, when we memorized it in the King James Version. Okay? That's how I have it memorized. I've never quite memorized it in any other version, including the New RSV. So when you put me in a corner, or I don't have my Bible with me, and you need to hear a verse from the Bible, you'll hear me saying it, this Psalm 23, King James. Now, scholars are divided on who actually wrote this psalm. Some believe it is King David. Others believe it may have came after King David, or he may have hired somebody in his court to do it. And before you get too upset about that, I want to shock you with another piece of information. As I took spiritual formation many years ago now, the saint that I looked at was the guy by the name of St. Francis of Assisi. And he has a very famous prayer that is attributed to him. It's called the Prayer of St. Francis. But when I was studying him and just looking for knowledge, one of the things I discovered is, lo and behold, that St. Francis probably didn't write the prayer. Now, hold on to your hats. It probably was an English minister in the 18th century who wrote it. But if you get all hung up on who wrote something, then you miss the power of it. If we're going to fight about who the author of a particular verse was or a particular prayer, then you miss something, brothers and sisters. You miss the power for it to speak into your heart and to your soul, to comfort you and to guide you and to lift you up. I've done this Psalm 23 at funerals for people who had no particular religious affiliation. And that's how powerful it seems to be. So this Sunday, I would like to give you not so much a sermon, but how this psalm impacts me. But it began with the devotions at the council meeting. And there we were read to us and told of Shammah. Shammah, it was the verse of all verse. It was a statement of faith. It was the creed of the Jewish people. And mothers and fathers would teach their little children this Shammah. And I wish I had the Hebrew, and I wish I could speak it, because it's profound when it is spoken. But in English, it's simply this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Yahshua Bar Yosef, we know as Jesus of Nazareth, would have had that read to him and recited to him by his mama and his papa, Mary and Joseph. From a very, very early age, he would have heard this. And most likely, he internalized it, the statement of faith, so that it went something like this to him. Hear this, my beloved child. I alone am your God and Lord. Love me so that you hear my voice, and love me at your core and with all your heart. I hear Psalm 23 much like Jesus must have heard Shammah. For when we say the Lord is my shepherd, there is no other. The Lord is our shepherd. The Lord is everything I need. I have no other wants. If Jesus or God is the one who guides me, sustains me, and keeps me moving, what else do I need? For at the heart of all hearts, that is all that is needed. This is a sign and a word of caring, calling me to simply care. I want only to love the Lord our God, for in caring for me, I have learned to love and care for God. And in loving and caring for God, then I have no choice but to love you and care for you as Jesus and God cares for me. I have no choice. I must do it. I get to do it. The Lord maketh me lie down in green pastures and leadeth me beside still waters. In those desperate times and in unknown futures, I can rest in God's never-failing arms of love and comfort. God guides me and quenches my parched lips with the cool water of God's presence. There, besides the people I love and are loved by, I rest. When I used to sing to my daughters and put them to sleep and sing my baby bio to them, bye-bye, baby. Bye-bye, baby, bye-oh. Close your eyes tonight. God has you now. Those moments I have experienced in a profound way, green pastures and still waters. In these words, I find a promise that I will walk in Eden with God, guiding me along the way. In dangerous times and places, God secures my existence one way or another. When I am broken, when life becomes a burden to me, when I tremble at what the future may or may not bring, then God restoreth my soul. In my remembrance of my baptism and in the Lord's Supper, God lifts up my drooping head, and there I behold a caring and accepting smile. And it is not always easy to get up off the ground, but the hand of God reaches out towards me, and a strength beyond mine lifts me up. And God leads me on paths of righteousness for the sake of God's name. God has a vested interest in the way I live and act. When I behave like a self-centered, immature, and selfish person, God asks me, "Who are you? And what is your life saying about me?" And I am to remember not only who I am, but whose I am. And this makes a difference in how I act and behave. I remember that there are others watching me. There are children watching me. There are young men and women watching me. There are adults watching me and learning from me a way of living to the glory of God. And that I should continue to seek to let God lead me so that I might reflect a life of honor and holiness back to God. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Lord, even when your path takes me through the valley of deepest darkness, fear will never conquer me, for you already have. Do you hear that? You remain close to me and lead me through it all the way. Now, this doesn't mean that I will not face pain, disappointment, or loss. Instead, when I experience these things, God will be with me, guiding me through the darkness. And God never abandons me in the darkness, even when I may fail to turn to God at such times. God will guide me and bring me through the other side, just like Jesus Christ. For when all seemed lost, Christ stood alive on the third day in the grave and spit at death itself. I need not let the circumstances of my life overcome me, because God has a power over me and in me already. Will I run to God or from God? Sometimes I do one or the other, I admit that. But God always is with me, often painfully waiting for me to see that God is before me, holding me up and standing beside me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. God, you become a delicious feast even when my enemies dare to fight. When you anoint me with the fragrance of the Holy Spirit, you give me a call so that I might drink of you until my heart overflows with your grace. But this gift, though, is not mine to hold on to for my sake alone. When I feast upon your love, the table is not closed to those who are my enemies or different from me. Your delicious grace is not mine to withhold or to eat like some glutton. Instead, it is meant to be a sign to others that they are welcome to come to your table and to taste your riches and your feast. I stand blessed as a sign to let others toss aside the clips that hold their bullets and a call to sheathe their knives so they may come to taste the goodness of the Lord. And surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I don't know absolutely if David wrote this psalm. If the house implies the temple, we know that David never was given the chance to build it. That would come during the reign of his son Solomon. If the house implies a lineage linked to God, then David could have written it. It does not matter to me. The thing that matters to me is how I understand Psalm 23, speaking to me in this 21st century. The thing that matters to me is what God has written to us in Jesus Christ. God has pursued me despite the times I have run from God or turned from God or doubted in God's love for me. God is God, and I thank God for that truth. There are parts of me that are so scared or broken. Nothing short of a miracle will ever make me whole. I have cuts and wounds deep within my psyche that I walk with forever. But the miracle comes, at least for me, in the one whose parents read Shema to him when he was growing up. As someone else put it, God has a final peace in store. And while the greatness of God's love and presence for us in this life is significant, it is also a foreshadowing of the redemption that awaits God's people ultimately in the next life. Our eternal relationship with God begins in this life and carries on in the next. Psalm 23, for those of us who interpret it from the angle of what God has done through Jesus, concludes with a nod to this important focus and reminds us that no matter what failures or struggles we might encounter, God is waiting to take away all burdens completely and fully when this life and this world are over. So the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want.